Well, Kenya remains on high alert after at least 21 people were killed in a terror attack. The East African nation has experienced several terror attacks since the 1970s. But how prepared is South Africa for a terrorist attack after the assault in Nairobi, suspected terror attacks in Mozambique and continued fighting in Somalia, among others? One must ask, can South Africa rest easy? Would South Africa be able to stop a possible attack in the event of one? Let's get you the answers now with Terrorism Research and Analysis Consortium Director Jasmine Opperman. Jasmine, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Newsnight. Really, the question is South Africa prepared enough in the case or in the event of a terrorist attack?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. I think one should take utmost care in making comparisons to where we have seen a history of violent extremist groups active. South Africa does not have a similar context, and our threat to terrorism must be very specifically defined. How prepared are we? I think there are two concerning factors here. From a reactive approach, with our rapid deployment forces going through intense training, I would say that there would be adequate response. The concerning factor is the proactive nature. Our security sector, I'm referring to the State Security Agency and I'm referring to various prosecution authorities, do they truly understand what we are confronted with, number one? Number two, are our executive arms getting appropriate intelligence analysis on the exact nature of the threat? And what do we mean by a person that is being radicalized to the extent of a willingness to execute? And that, I think, is the fundamental concern we're having in South Africa. I don't see that. I think it's absent, and it's leaving our executive arms in darkness in terms of understanding the changing nature of extremism.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this concept of extremism, and I'm just going to refer to one incident. If you remember the 2002 bombings in Soweto that was caused by a white supremacist group, I think they called themselves the Warriors of the Boer Nation, and then following which there's still an ongoing case right now in a trial of those individuals, those 11 suspects that were arrested for allegedly having bombed a mosque in KZN. So in such an instance, referring to the case in 2002 where it was by an ex-white supremacist group, and then obviously looking at the most recent one with the 11 suspects that were arrested, would you not say that there are elements of extremism in the country? And if there are, how do you mitigate that?
That there are elements present without a shadow of a doubt. We cannot ignore that. Al-Qaeda has a long history of presence in South Africa. There are Islamic State supporters in South Africa. Yes, they are low in numbers. We don't see them in cell formations or cell organizations on the information I have available. So we must not be naive that we are completely isolated. That's point number one. South Africa's vulnerability to extremism due to the social network interaction and the influence of propaganda on people, on especially the youth, is a concerning factor, but it remains the exception to the rule. In terms of mitigating, let's go, and I want to bring in the issue of the Tulsi. Well, if one looks at these cases, they were immediate jumping to conclusions. The Tulsi case is a prime example of failure of having a soft approach in how to deal with individuals that could have been de-radicalized or could have been radicalized, and there was simply no intent to de-radicalize or engage their families and say, let's assist. To the contrary, they were just thrown back, and it's a case of entrapment. The Durban cell, finding an Islamic State flag, finding weapons that is so old that a weapon dealer actually told me this is absolute junk, and then say this is an Islamic State cell, I think is ludicrous. People can go on Telegram, they can download a lot of Islamic State propaganda material on how to compile a bomb. It doesn't take much, it takes you 5 minutes, to be quite honest. Does that make you a terrorist? Not necessarily. We have to go back to the conviction issue, the ideological issue, and the Durban bombings up until this point has not been proven to be driven, inspired, or directed by the Islamic State. To the contrary, it seems like extortion played a major role. Yet the issue is projected as Islamic State. That creates anxiety amongst the public. I think it's this level of analysis that I'm talking about that seems to be desperately lacking and that we need to address. Government needs to understand the threat for what it is in South Africa so that we can have a hard power approach in terms of police, but a soft power approach, working with communities. You don't have to spy on mosques. You can work with them. I am fortunate to work now with Islamic theology on countering extremism, where we are using the Muslim narrative in countering extremism and the abuse of Islam to great effect. And that is what we need to do in South Africa.
And Jasmine, of course, on the other side of it is one would be, is South Africa an environment that enables a terrorist movement? And I'm going to refer to the issue of, if we remember, the Black Widow. And then it became a whole issue around, is South Africa an environment where we are harboring or potentially could be an environment that harbors and even, creates a safety zone for those individuals that are interested in taking on terrorism acts. Would you say that at this stage we are, or in your opinion, we're really not? It's just that we need to be very stringent with our border control, as well as perhaps looking at issues around government control as well.
South Africa is the ideal place for a safe haven. Let's be honest about it. Our border control measures are not in place. People are moving in and out across our borders. Mozambique is a prime example of people flooding into South Africa without any level of control. So if we talk counter-terrorism, it's a much broader concept, and it involves various government departments. Let's take terror financing. The amounts of money going out of South Africa to extremist groups have still not been determined. I'm not talking Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State only. I'm talking about Pakistani militant groups. The grievance is directed outside. It's not against South Africa. But South Africa provides the environment in which they can then find these supply streams, like finances, and that must be countered at all costs.
How do you counter such a thing? And clearly, if unaccounted for amounts of money are leaving the country to finance terrorist groups, that in itself says there's a severe failure within our system. There's a severe failure within our policing system, within government, within the NIA. There's clearly an issue here around, making sure that money that funds terrorism groups and people that do that are actually made or brought to account. So, A, it's either we're very corrupt as a nation and therefore we allow such acts to continue, or B, meaning that perhaps there are bigger powers at play that allow this problem to persist.
I think it is again, we must look at the whole way of which it's being done. Take the following. According to our legal mandate, any amount over 10,000 rand has to be reported to the Financial Intelligence Center. Now, you can imagine how much money crosses or moves out of South Africa exceeding that amount. So if that Financial Intelligence Center does not have a person, an account number, and a clear indication of terror financing, it will never pick it up. It is virtually impossible. They are overloaded. They have my sympathy. It is mission impossible. Then we set with a Wawala system, which is totally outside the formalized banking institution, where money is being transferred with any records being made available. So we need to start looking at the level of cooperation with other role players, with other states, and determining what happens to the funds leaving us, and, for example, going to Pakistan. What happens on that side? Where does this money flow to? If you don't have that level of cooperation, forget it. No legal or law will enable you to counter the flow of terror financing.
Jasmine, definitely an insightful conversation there. Thanks a lot for shedding some light in terms of South Africa's preparedness, really, to take on any form of looming terror attack, or even looking at the environment that we find ourselves in. Are we creating an environment where terrorism acts, or even the funding of terrorism, can actually persist there? It is Jasmine Opperman, who is a Terrorism Research and Analysis Consortium. She's the director there. Over to you, Gareth.